This is undoubtedly a video topic that was nowhere in my agenda, but a conversation just so happened to spark it. I like it because it's an example of how I interact with what I observe mentally. I wish I could describe what that process is like, but sometimes I will observe something and get lost in it and try to imagine things, and then that's how I can keep going talking about one topic that has no substance whatsoever. But I like to think that I can twist it in a way to where it may end up having a degree of substance. The person I was talking to has had a family member in the hospital. I was able to visit this family member at the hospital. Every single hospital experience has been different, of course, because the patient is going to have their own reason for this hospital visit. When my mom had to be at the clinic herself for sometimes, the timing of her round was very unfortunate because it was happening at a time when I had a lot of things to juggle. It was between the winter and spring. During the winter, work is more demanding, taking time off is nearly impossible, and overall, I'm just tired and fatigued, and that's when I need for the world to be quieter and for me to be a loner, but those are the things that aren't going to happen as easily. I literally have to fight for such a thing. Now in the spring, although the weather is phenomenal and it's my favorite time of the year, it sucks because there's stuff that I can anticipate happening. My car is gonna need maintenance and the registration is going to be due, so there's a financial burden there. I also have tax filing to look forward to, not which to me, it has always been a very anxiety inducing experience because my first 3-4 years filing taxes were terrible. And I guess that even though my experience with that has vastly improved in recent times, I still have that ghost from the past just weighing me down. And with that comment that I just made, it should be very easy for you guys to conclude that experiences that are anxiety inducing for me and very traumatic, I tend to struggle letting go of. And in a sense, that's why having this channel slash journal is so important for me, because I get to, even if it's years later, it could be 10 years later, I can look at something and be like, you know what? It took a hella long time of suffering and misery that I put myself through or was put through, but at least I can look at those things now and be like, I'm grateful that I'm never going to go through that stuff again, but react to it in that manner. Like, I should rephrase that. The incident may happen again, but how I exist during the time of the incident is going to be vastly different. It's a part of growth, and I guess that my growth tends to be a very slow one. However, I'm grateful that the growth is happening in the first place. Now to finally get into what I intended to say with this video topic, we were observing the hospital building from a distance. And I forget how this started, but we were commenting on the aesthetics of the building. I was asked if I had heard any patients moaning and screaming or something like that. And I said, I only heard the one that you pointed out because I focused on it and everybody in our room got quiet. And I was like, oh yeah, there's some moaning going on there. But the side that we were on, of course, it's the side where after the emergency has happened, you get transferred to this room. This is not a surgery room. This is kind of like your hospital stay overnight kind of room. The recovery room, I guess is what you would call it. When you're on that side, you are not supposed to be in the worst of states, I would imagine. I'm not saying that you're going to be free from pain or free from suffering, because you're still in the hospital. You may need intervention again. That side of the hole, I guess, that we were on, it was just a peaceful, quiet chill, laid back one. And I guess as new patients transferred into those rooms, then maybe the one that we happened to hear was one that was freshly out of an intervention. It's crazy that I made a comment when we were a distance away from the building about the aesthetics of the edifice itself. I'm like, can you believe this marvel of engineering that we have? Architectural engineering, this building. It looks like it's very well maintained from the outside, despite being battered by the elements. The windows are shiny. The brick doesn't look like it's worn down in any way. Whatever areas had brick, whatever areas were, whatever material that building is. And then the hospital itself, the halls are impeccable. Everything is like pretty clean, considerably clean. And it makes sense because it's so easy to catch something in a place like that where open wounds can be the order of the day. But I couldn't help but get lost in a little bit of a trance, but I was speaking about it and describing how you see that building from the outside looking like that, so marvelous and stuff, but when you go inside, everything that is happening within those walls is a massive world of possibilities. Like someone goes into that building and they're not gonna come back out alive. There's someone in there who's going to be mourning the loss of somebody. There's going to be someone whose life has changed because of the financial burden that this hospital visit is going to have. There's also the aspect of how you're going to live with whatever findings you learn about during this visit. Somebody possibly ended up being disabled. Somebody is going to have to plan their lives once again because life as they knew it doesn't exist anymore. Other people may have gotten a little bit of a scare, but at least they were able to recover in a way that, thanks to that hospital visit or stay, it turns out that they're going to live a better life. Somebody is probably finding out that there's stuff that they can't eat anymore, or there's pieces of clothes that they can't wear anymore because it has a detrimental effect on their skin, any number of things. All those things. It's a building that houses probably the most diversity when it comes to life, because you have people possibly from every socio-economic status imaginable, with every physical condition imaginable, and a lot of horror that has gone within those walls. Those walls could also house a place where some people regain their hope. Some people may have been able to have had a new opportunity in life that they otherwise wouldn't have. And maybe after that hospital visit, it turns out that their lives became better. Of course, the moment that I had that thought and I verbalized it, I was far more detailed and had many more ideas that were hitting me as I was observing the building. Now I'm trying to like imagine it in my brain and remember what I said. But yeah, you guys, so hospital buildings from the outside versus what's going on in the inside. On the outside, you see that the view of the hospital is steady, but within it, each room has a special story, a unique story to tell. And the staff themselves, even though they have trained and practiced to address those emergencies and whatever their role is, they, I would imagine, get to say that not every day is the same day. And something else I thought about was stab wound victims. That is a wound that I would imagine is very difficult to address because there's no telling what organs that took. Another thing that I liked to think about was how usually when you have a diagnosis of something beforehand, a doctor who may have to do a procedure on you is probably going to have time to come up with a plan as to how they're going to go about something. Say that you need to get a lumpectomy. Like, they will have time to probably map you out and figure out your medical history to be like, okay, this person may not have allergic reactions to anything that I may need to use. yada yada. But then I would imagine that the ER is a different story, because what if this person doesn't have an ID on them? What if this person, you try to help them and save them, but you end up giving them something that makes them react? The relatives of this person may not be the most humanity oriented people at the time that this is happening, because emotions are really high. Let's say that you try to save their relative, but in an effort to do so, they ended up suffering more because of the unknown factors. I'm like, at least this person was able to try things that I had zero possibility of trying as someone who's not medically trained in any capacity. You're getting mad at this person who tried to do their job and save your relative. But what right do you have to feel that way when your knowledge and skill set cannot compare to that of this professional? Hence, the way that your relative made it to this place in the first place, they had to be rushed in and taken away from you, because if you could take care of it yourself, wouldn't you? Especially since you know your relative so much better. So those pressures that emerge from those situations, and maybe some people would even try to take legal action on some of those instances. So do any of these folks ever feel like, you know what, I never would have thought that doing my job would lead to a mistake that would end up being costly and stressful? And you know how the USA is very protocol oriented and not necessarily for the better of things, or really to achieve anything. It's just protocol. And those things is probably the one building where, if you keep your eyes and ears open and overall your own mind open, it's probably the best place to learn about the nuances of life, if you ask me. I also think that it would be a great place to, if time allowed it, because these folks are like, on a tight schedule, I think it would be a great place to get mentoring in general. There's a side of me that makes me want to be like, what about the people who are in that hospital and they're alone and they have no one to visit them? And it would probably mean a lot to them to have a visitor in a time like that. How did that happen? Will that person's circumstance change? Like, oh my God, I was at the hospital. This hospital visit led to a relative moving in with me or moving in closer to me, something like that. What would it do? I feel like the hospital would be the place that lets you see your life for what it truly is, and especially expose your vulnerabilities, the ones that were there the entire time and maybe new ones that you may not be aware of. So yeah, you guys, I thought I would ramble about that because I thought, wow, it's crazy how many thoughts can emerge from just examining a building from the outside. And it also helps that I have visited the inside of it a couple of times now within the past year. And I was observing two different stories, but the content remains the same. It's someone's health, someone's life is changing. How? Why? What's that going to result in? So there you guys have it. I guess you can call this the hospital/health changes your life topic. Feel free to, in the comments, drop any thoughts that you may have, if this triggered a memory in you, if you have ever pondered the same stuff that I have. Just feel free to tell me anything. You guys know you can tell me anything. But I thought that right off the bat, those were the thoughts that I can say I have.